Hi everyone, Fat Mazlan here, and I'm launching a podcast called What the Fat. It is a career podcast that's about to shake things up. Whether you're a fresh grad, mid career pro, or re entering the workforce, this is for you. I'm your host, Fad, and as the name of the podcast suggests, I replaced the more vulgar version to keep it clean but still capture that wow factor. Prepare for those WTF moments of clarity as you learn the real stories behind successful careers. We're ditching the sugar coated advice and diving into raw, unfiltered conversation with industry leaders. Think WTF moments of clarity. We're getting real stories, the struggles, and the shortcuts you won't find anywhere else. Forget polished resumes. We're talking about real career blueprints, pivots, and hard won lessons. Get ready for those light bulb moments, those what the fun, I never thought of it that way revelations. So if you're ready for a career podcast that's as real as it gets, buckle up. What the Fun is here to drop some serious knowledge bombs. Let's get into it. All right, welcome back to the podcast. What the Fat? My name is Fat Mazlan. I'm the host of this podcast, and this podcast is about career conversation. So now I have a special guest here, Latif. Latif is a pilot. So before I introduce him, I rather let him introduce himself. So Latif, just introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? And how long have you been doing this?
Okay, hello guys. My name is Latif. I've been a pilot for 7 years. I'm currently flying the Boeing 777 aircraft for. Uh,
Okay.
so we operate worldwide. What else? I started my career flying the Airbus A320.
Mm-hmm.
Started as a cadet pilot there, and then worked my way up. I'm currently a senior first officer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, tell me before you even become a pilot, like why become a pilot? Yeah, has it always been your dream to become a pilot, or halfway throughout growing up, you were studying and then you think that hey, it's cool to be a pilot, and is that why you went to this industry? Tell me all about it.
Um, you can say I've been pretty much set on my career path.
Okay.
Like I always knew I wanted to work around airplanes. So my inspiration was my grandfather. He was an engineer for the British Air Force when the British were in Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
The RAF Royal Air Force, I think it's called. What else? Yeah, and then once the British left, he joined Qantas and SQ as an engineer. So he inspired me. He brought me to all the air shows in Singapore,
Mm-hmm.
all the Singapore air shows that he could bring me. Um, yeah, so from as long as I can remember, I've wanted to be around airplanes.
Okay.
Along the way, I, I, well, I wasn't sure whether I wanted to go down the path of being an engineer or go down the path of being a pilot. So later on in life, I decided, that I wanted to fly instead, because that pull factor, the attraction of actually controlling the machines that I like to be around, it attracted me more than being the engineer.
Okay, so let's go back. So when you were saying that before this you were thinking about either you're gonna be an engineer or a pilot, right?
Yep.
So at what point in your life that you decided to say that hey, I want to be a pilot? And this is really important for our listeners because a lot of times, and I can say this for myself as well. Throughout my schooling days, right, I have no idea what I want to be. And even after I've joined national service, I went out from national service, I ORD, I still have no clue what I wanted to do. So having someone who already know that path
Yep.
really helps you in defining on what you want in life, which is great.
Yeah.
So my question is, when do you know whether
Okay. I understand. You want to know the turning point.
the turning and this is because why I want to know the turning point is because it will help you set that pathway of how you want to achieve your goal.
Yeah.
As opposed to someone who realize it later, then they'll be like, okay, I've went through the wrong pathway. Now I have to steer back to, okay, if I want to be a pilot, then I'll start to research on how do I be a pilot. So,
Yeah.
so I like to know, like, when was that turning point, and from that turning point, how is it that you managed to achieve to being a pilot? Like, what do you do to try to understand, like, how do I become a pilot?
I see. Yeah. So the turning point for me was when I was in poly.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Is
I
it-
studied.
I'm just gonna
Yeah.
cut you there. Is it because you were like the girls were like into pilots and you were like,
No.
oh, okay, I think, and versus a pilot and an engineer, I think
Yeah.
I'd rather be a pilot because then all of the girls would be like looking at me.
Yeah. No, it's not about the girls. It's not about the girls.
Yeah.
Basically, the stuff that I studied like an aerospace kind of a diploma.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Aerospace engineering.
Mhm.
It geared more towards the aerospace engineering maintenance side. So learning all the stuff pertaining to the maintenance of aircraft, I discovered that this wasn't my cup of tea. Like being in the workshop and machining aluminum and carbon fiber and stuff. I was interested in it. There was interest, of course. Excuse me. But I realized, this is not what I want to do. Yeah. And at that time, I discovered a website. It was called askcaptainlim.com. He was a Malaysian pilot, captain, and I think he flew for Singapore Airlines. I can't remember now. But it was at the time where, people used the internet was gaining traction for this kind of stuff. Where you can find blog posts and stuff. So it was more like a blog. And basically, he posted questions, or he had questions coming in from people who wanted to be pilots, and he answered them honestly.
Okay.
And I read it, and I was inspired by him. And I decided, you know what? Okay, after I finish my diploma, I'm gonna try everything I can to be a pilot.
Okay. So now that you already know that you're gonna be a pilot, right? So how is it that you go into that pathway of being a pilot? What is the research that you do? And why I'm asking this is because for our listeners out there who wants to be a pilot, like, how is it that they can become a pilot? How much does it cost? Because I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of cost into it for you to be trained up to be a pilot.
Yes.
So could you just share that with us?
Yeah. So I had the same misconceptions. As a Singaporean, yeah, there aren't that many roads to be a pilot. So the first thing I would advise people to do is join the Youth Flying Club.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It came up during the interview, my Singapore Airlines interview, and I think that question helped me fail that interview. Because when I asked my parents if I could join the Youth Flying Club, they told me it was expensive. They said you need about $10,000. They couldn't afford it at that time. So I was like, okay, I didn't pursue it further. But I didn't do my own research. Later on, I found out during the interview that it was free for Singaporeans. If you can make it past, if you can jump through all the hoops and make it past the interviews and the tests and stuff like that, then you join the Youth Flying Club and you can get a license for a pilot's license, private pilot's license, even before you're eligible for a driver's license. So at the age of 16,
Wow. Okay.
at the age of 16, you can get a flying license in Singapore. So that's how I would say Youth Flying Club first step. And then second step, I would advise if the cadet pilot program is open in Singapore Airlines, apply for it and try your best to get it, because that is a state. I wouldn't say it's state sponsored.
Yeah.
But you don't have upfront costs. So Youth Flying Club is free. Joining the SQ cadet pilot program is technically free as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the
They
company
sponsor
will
your-
sponsor for you, right?
Training. Yeah. I mean, they take it back as part of your salary. That's what I heard
Yeah.
later on. But anyway, they give you the training, so
Yeah.
they can
Mm-hmm.
they can take you back anyway. Yeah. And there are other avenues. So like Scoot has a cadet pilot program, which is self-sponsored. It
Mhm.
costs about 100,000 to 150,000
Mm-hmm.
Singapore dollars. So if you don't have the cash, then maybe that's a bit difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And other than that, I mean, you can go down the path of getting a private pilot's license from flight schools, but the pathway into airlines will be more difficult.
If you
Like,
take it from a private school.
yeah,
Why is that so? Because it's not recognized?
it's not. Sorry, excuse me.
Sorry, so for our listeners out there, Latif just flown into Singapore from right?
Yeah,
He
I
just
just
flown
landed
in, he
this
just landed,
afternoon.
and then he's here to do this podcast. So that's why he's feeling a little bit unwell.
Yeah.
But we really
Jet lag.
appreciate you coming in. You know, first thing landing here straight away come to the podcast. So
No worries.
appreciate it.
Yeah, so as I was saying, if you get a license on your own, it'll be difficult because you don't have an airline backing you. You know, you basically applying to the airlines with your own credentials, your own flying hours, and it also depends on the flight school you come from. Because some airlines prefer certain flight schools. You know, and like SQ doesn't like to take fresh like pilots from other flight schools. They prefer to train their own cadets because they're an empty slate.
So it's similar like you go to a government sector. If you go into NUS, you're more likely to get hired as opposed to you get, a paid degree or
from an overseas degree or
yeah.
part-time degree. Yeah, exactly. It's
Okay,
like
okay.
that.
So it's like that. All right.
Yeah. So like even between flight schools, there are like rankings, or
So like
some
schools
flight
is
schools
like
have better reputation than others.
Uh-huh.
And what else? Yeah. So if you were to get your license from flight schools like these, then your best bet would be Scoot or Jetstar in Singapore.
Mm.
Otherwise, then you can look for jobs overseas, like what I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. So when you tried to, you didn't go for youth flying club, right? You mentioned that you tried SQ and then you didn't get SQ as well, right?
Yeah.
Then what's the next step? So you tried for
Yeah. So I applied for the SQ Cadet Pilot Program. I made it through to the final interview, the tea party, and I got cut there. So SQ's policy is, if you fail the final interview, you can never apply to be a cadet. But you cannot apply to be a cadet pilot again.
Okay.
So that was it. That was the end of the road for me for SQ. Yeah, and then the other two options were Scoot and had a cadet pilot program that was open as well. And at that time, I was lucky because these things, it's always supply and demand, and there's also some luck and of course risk involved. Yeah. So cadet pilot program was open, and the flight school was based in Singapore. So I applied after I failed the SQ interview, of course, and then everything went really smooth. I passed all the interviews, the aptitude tests, and I got a joining date, and I started 3 months after the final interview.
All right. So before I want to go on to that interview, that phase where you're training to become a pilot, is it? It's called what? A cadet training, is it?
Yeah, cadet pilot.
Cadet pilot training. So this is really good for our listeners as well. When you tried something and then you failed,
Yes.
that didn't stop you. You try other avenues because your passion is I really want to be a pilot. So even if I fail this, I will find other avenues to be a pilot. So that's something for our listeners to take into heart. If you fail, and this is something that I practice in my life as well, fall 6 times, get up 7 times. So that's how I always believe in whatever things that you do, because no one is perfect, right? And failure is actually the mother of all success, because when you fail, you learn something and it builds that resilience in you to just keep on trying and keep on trying. So I love that you, even though that you fail the first time and then you tried on other airlines.
Yeah.
Now, before we even go there, I want to touch on a bit of a sensitive topic. I don't know whether you can answer this or not.
Okay.
But from your perspective, right, the reason why you fail in the SQ interview, is it because does race have has a part to play that? Because I know in RSAF, right, it's very hard for Malay
Yeah.
to become a pilot.
Yeah.
So is it the same from from SQ perspective?
Okay. I think for the SQ from the SQ perspective, I don't think race played a part. I brought this up before actually. So the SQ interview was tough. They ask you questions even before you finish answering. Basically it's like you're standing in front of a firing squad. Before you can finish answering the next, like there's 6 captains in front of you. If one captain asks you a question, then before you finish answering, another one asks you another question. So this captain, he asked me, you have this background in aviation, diploma in aerospace engineering. You have a degree in that's aviation related. Why didn't you join the youth flying club? And I answered him. I said my parents said it was expensive, and they looked at each other, and I was like, why are they looking at each other? And then they were like, don't you know it's free? I was like, I was floored. I was like, it's free? And I was thrown back.
So you're not the only person who think that way, because I thought it's very expensive
Exactly.
as well.
Yeah.
Going to that pilot route is really expensive. So
Yeah.
that's why I didn't even bother going to that route,
Yeah.
because I didn't come from a rich family,
Yeah.
right? So that's good for our listeners to know.
Yeah,
that it's
neither
free.
did I. So yeah, and so I was reeling from that. I was like, did my parents lie to me, or like they didn't want me to fly, or I was thinking about all this stuff, and then I said, well, I just I was young and I believed my parents, like of course
Yeah.
I trust them with my life. And he was like, okay, but didn't you have access to a computer at home, like no internet? I was like, I did. He was like, you couldn't have.
Which year was this?
This was in 2014
Oh, 24, right? Okay.
or something like that. Yeah, 2015 maybe.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, I did. He was like, you don't have any friends who were in YFC? I was like, not really. He was like, yeah, but you could have done the research. I was like, I could have, And then whatever questions they asked me after, I was already one step behind. So yeah. I don't think it was race. I
Okay.
think what it was at that time when they were looking for cadet pilots, they opened up after many years. I think after the 2008 financial crisis, they closed the cadet pilot program. They reopened it then that year, like 2014, 2015, and everyone applied. So they could pick from the best of the best.
Yeah.
So I don't think I was the best of the best at that time. So in my
At that
batch,
time, right? At that time.
at that time.
Right.
So there were 8 of us. The one who got in, only one of the 8. 8 of us, 7 of us were undergrads. The one who got in was a ATC controller. So he had
Okay.
he was clear cut the best choice. I mean, I would have picked him.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, you asked about
So
the Air Force.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So when I was in the army, I enjoyed being a soldier, and I wanted to join the Air Force because
Yeah.
that's I wanted to be a pilot.
Yeah.
So youth flying club, SQ cadet pilot, those are the options.
Yeah.
But of course, RSAF pilot is there, and who
Yeah.
doesn't want to fly fighter jets? So I applied when I was in BMT. The Air Force comes in, they give you like a recruitment talk, and after the recruitment talk, I applied. But some of my friends, they got to go for the medical, the
Yeah.
campus test. I got a letter. Dear Abdul Latif, we are unable to offer you the position of pilot in the Republic of Singapore Air Force. So, yeah.
All right. Before we go on, we'll have a short break so that Latif could drink water. I see he's coughing for quite some time, and then we'll regroup after this. Thank you. All right. Welcome back to our podcast, What the Fuck? All right. So let's go back to where we left off, which is you got rejected from
Yes.
RSAF.
Yes.
So just quickly walk through what actually happened.
Yeah. So after I got a rejection letter from the Air Force, then you mentioned about perseverance. It actually fired me up a lot, and I put in my best foot forward. I did my best in the BMT. I didn't wayang. And so after I finished BMT, we got the rankings, yeah. So I was like top 3 in the platoon. So to me, that's like, okay, OCS material. I have it there. Because my next step was, okay, get into OCS and then try again for the Air Force. And when I got my posting letter, it was CISPEC. And I was like, what? So I spoke to the guy who was ranking number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They got OCS. I was like, something's not right. But I didn't speak to anyone about it. I mean, I just went to CISPEC because they said, if you do well in CISPEC and if you have the stuff, you can cross over to OCS after the foundation term. And foundation term ended, I was company best soldier.
Oh,
And
nice.
there were 3 companies. The 2 others, I was in Juliet company, Lima and Kilo, company best. They cross over to OCS, no interview. Platoon best have to go for interview. Company best, tak payah interview. Straight away, cross over to OCS. For me, they told me initially that, okay, you are the company best, but we might have to adjust your scores. I was like, why? They said, no, I just want to give you the recognition. But in the end, long story short, I didn't cross over.
Okay.
So, after that, I realized, okay, maybe my race or religion has a part to play in this, So then that's where I gave up my Air Force dream. And I decided, okay, after I ORD, then I will try my best to get into the commercial line of flying.
Okay, nice. Well, that still didn't stop you from pursuing your goal. So
Yeah.
let's talk about during that training when you got that acceptance letter from Airways. So how is the training like? How long does it take for you to officially get your license to fly?
Well, it took about 1.5 years.
Okay.
So 6 months of pure theory.
Wait, sorry. Let's just rewind that. Before even you applied for that, is there any criteria that is needed for you to apply for a cadet? Do you have like to have a degree, or you need to, O levels is enough, or polytechnic is diploma is enough? So what's the minimum criteria? Do you remember?
I can't remember exactly. I think for SQ it was O levels or A levels equivalent or diploma, something like that. So
you don't need to have a degree.
you don't need to have a degree. Even
Okay.
for it was the same.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. Cool. So
That was
sorry for cutting you.
No worries.
Because for listeners to know, like, do they really need to have a degree before
No.
they apply? So
No,
that's
you
good
don't.
to know.
It would be good, but not necessarily.
Okay, if it's not necessary, you don't want to waste another 4 years of your life, right?
Yeah, I have colleagues from Singapore who joined after they finished the NS.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they have poly diplomas or A levels only,
Okay.
and they apply and they're
Alright.
flying now. Yep.
So for that 1.5 year, like, how's the training like? Was
Yeah.
there any point of time where you find this is too difficult, or walk us through that 1.5 year, so at least our listeners can have a feel if this is something that they want to venture, because there's a lot of commitment going into 1.5 year of training. Yeah.
I would say the toughest 6 months. The toughest part of training were the first 6 months.
Okay.
So the ground school portion, it's 14 exams. Wow. The minimum passing mark is 75%. Yeah, and you take 7 exams in the first 3 months, and then the next 7 in the next 3 months. So I mean, you have to learn everything from 0 to 100 about the weather, about meteorology, about aircraft general knowledge, about operating radios, about aerial navigation, navigating the skies and stuff like that. So
does your previous diploma, which you were in aerospace, if I'm not right, does that help you in this, or was it like, it doesn't help me one bit, I have to study from scratch?
it helped me in one or two of the exams.
Okay.
But generally, the other stuff was all new knowledge to me.
Okay.
Yeah. So like stuff like aerodynamics, I did it before as part of my degree and part of the diploma, and stuff like aircraft general knowledge. There is an exam called AGK, aircraft general knowledge. Like all the pilots, they have to do it. And my background did help me in those two exams. But stuff like meteorology, where you learn how the weather of the world is formed, and you learn a lot of new technology, a lot of new terminology, and a lot of new theories. It is a lot, and most of the guys who didn't make it in training, they were cut off at that stage.
Okay.
Yeah, where they didn't meet the minimum requirement in terms of the passing grade 75% in all the papers. Yeah.
Okay, so you said the first 6 months that was tough. After that is more or less is not as difficult as that first 6 months.
Because after the first 6 months of theory, passed the exams, then we did 6 months of flying the Cessna. And to me, that's my dream. You get to fly. Finally, for the first time, you get to be in the control of an airplane. I was living the dream. I was enjoying it. So there were one or two guys who struggled during that phase as well. But I mean, as long as you that's where you will know whether you will enjoy being a pilot or not, because that's your first taste of flying. The Cessna flying. Yeah. And some pilots actually say that that's the best flying that you ever do, because airline flying is completely different from Cessna flying.
Okay.
General aviation, yeah.
All right. So while you were training 1.5 year, right? Obviously, they give you lodging, or is it something that you need to pay for lodging? Because it was in right?
In Australia.
In Australia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was there lodging?
Yeah, we had lodging.
Yeah.
Like
So
tied up
that was
with
my back crew. He was like saying like, what? Like, you don't even know this? Yes, I don't even know this. Yeah.
had a tie-up with the Singapore Flight School, ST Aerospace Academy.
Okay.
And they have flight schools in Australia and the US, because Singapore is really small.
Yeah.
There are a handful of flying schools here.
So was everything paid for? Lodging and
yeah,
it's
all included in the package, I would say. So it program was a self-sponsored program. I got help from my my dad.
Okay.
To settle that initially.
So go back again. So what do you mean you got help from your dad to settle that? So
yeah,
you have to
pay for the cadet pilot program. Like Scoot. Yeah.
So if you don't mind me asking, so
Yes.
for our listeners who want to go to that direction, if they can't get a skill, right? How much are you willing? Can you share
Yeah, it's around $150,000.
150,000, and you have to pay it upfront, or
no, they break it up in installments.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that is the price that you are required to in order for you to be a pilot.
Yes.
Now, if halfway through you can't make it, what happens to that fee? Just down the drain then.
Yeah, it burns.
But do they? Is it like poly where if you fail you can take sub paper, right? Do they allow that, or?
For the theory, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, they give you chances.
Okay.
Like you can reseat the paper, but I think there's like a maximum number that you can do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then for the practical?
For the flying part of it, the instructors generally help you out. So for those who are struggling, they give you more time flying. They put more attention on you, more practice. If one instructor doesn't work out, they change the instructor. So, you get different perspectives. So most people do pull through.
Okay.
But I do know one or two guys who had issues. Yeah.
Okay.
So you pay up to where you stop.
Got it.
You don't get the money back. Yeah.
So obviously once you graduated, it was like a dream come true to you, right? All of that, you've been waiting all of your life actually training for this, and you got that. Now when you were graduated, right? Tell us the experience. Like, you've been flying for 7 years, right? Tell us some of the challenges that you face and some of the success or things that you enjoy
Okay.
in your career. So at least our listeners can have a feel whether if I want to throw away or invest, not throw away, invest $150,000, is it worth it? And
Yeah.
do I get it back? So
Yeah. I mean, financially, it's worth it. You make the money back for sure.
and we'll talk about that about the financial part later.
Yeah.
If you're comfortable about
Yeah.
it. But let's talk about the challenges.
Yeah. So, I mean, you fly in a multicultural environment.
Mm-hmm.
So I fly with captains from all around the world, literally. So like today I'll fly with a captain. Tomorrow I'll fly with a Chinese captain. The next day I'll fly with an American guy.
Okay, just put a hold on that.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are unaware of this line, right? So every plane will have two pilots. Am I correct?
Minimum.
Minimum two pilots. So
Yes.
it has to be one captain and one first officer.
Yeah, it can be two captains,
Oh,
or
okay.
one captain, one first officer,
Okay.
or one instructor pilot, one second officer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So when you just pass out, you'll be a first officer, or
Yeah. So in training,
What's the rank?
yeah, pilots in training with one bar, they're second officers.
Okay.
They can only fly with instructor captains.
Okay.
So captains who are instructor pilots, basically, they have been given the endorsement to conduct training
Okay.
in flight. And once second officer finishes his training, he goes through something called a final line check. So basically, he flies with a non-instructor captain on the left side. He sits on the right side, and an instructor sits at the back. The instructor is not flying; the instructor is just observing. And if the second officer manages to perform his duties as a first officer on that final line check, then he will be checked out as a first officer. He gets his 2 bars or
bars,
3 bars, depending on the company.
Okay.
Different companies have different.
So how long does it take for you from a second officer to a first officer?
It took me 1 year.
1 year.
Yeah.
Is that a normal duration, or depending on how?
It depends
good
on the
you are?
airlines, because I know some airlines it takes a bit longer. In it took me slightly longer than yours. Some of my friends finished it in 6 months. We had like a training backlog, so I didn't have that many instructors available to me. So that's why I was set back by a few months. Otherwise, 6 months to 1 year, it's pretty normal.
Okay.
Yeah.
And during this 7 years, what is the most challenging moment? You were saying that you're working with all of the different captains. Right? What is the most challenging moment that you face, and what is the most rewarding moment that you face in these 7 years?
Well, the most challenging moment was it was a difficult flight, I would say. It was a very long day. It was a flight from Athens back to we were supposed to change aircraft. The captain and I were supposed to go on a new aircraft, a new set of cabin crew as well, and fly back to Athens. So it was like a double sector day, we call it. And I was a new first officer at that time. I just checked out as a first officer, 3 months maybe. And the captain I was flying with back, he had a headache or a fever, so he reported sick at top of descent. And so what happened was I had to change aircraft, change cabin crew on my own, get the aircraft ready, wait for a standby captain to come to the aircraft, brief him, and then fly back to Athens. So as a new first officer, that was the most challenging thing that I have ever faced until today. And not only that, there was a lot of weather in Athens at that time, strong prevailing winds. So I briefed the new the standby captain about it, and he said he'll fly to Athens, and he had maybe 1 year to go before his retirement. So you could see the experience gradient.
Yeah.
He was like in his 50s or 60s, 1 year to retirement. I was like, brand new first officer. So he was like, full on instructor mode, trying to teach me, show me things. And during the descent into Athens, we hit severe turbulence. And the autopilot kicked off twice. Aircraft was like, I'm out of here, guys. You have control. The speed was going everywhere. I could feel myself like I was out of the situation completely. I was lost, basically. Like, I was useless to him.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Because first of all, I was tired. I was out of it. Like after everything that happened back, captain had to report sick. Had to wait for a new guy, brief the crew, set up the aircraft. I was already smashed. Like it's like past my experience already. So when that happened in Athens, it took me a lot to pull myself back and hey, I have a job to do here. Okay, severe turbulence, no autopilot. Let's get the job done. Yeah. So that was the most challenging thing I faced.
And the most rewarding?
The most rewarding.
You're a pilot and all the chicks are, chasing after you.
No chicks chasing after me, actually. Unfortunately. No, but I'm married, so alhamdulillah. No chicks.
Yes, he's happily married.
Happily married. Yeah.
Obviously, which is good. But do you get hit a lot? Hit on
a lot?
Yeah, hit on a lot by no.
No.
Ah.
Yeah. So maybe I don't notice these things, but yeah.
Maybe because he's married, so he can't say.
Yeah, I know my. I always flash the ring. Yeah. So honestly, I don't get hit on a lot. No.
Okay.
Because in my company we have a lot of Europeans and Middle Easterners. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the most rewarding part. You didn't answer that question.
Most rewarding part.
Doing something that you love, is that the most rewarding part?
Yeah, honestly, I don't feel like I drag myself to work. I dread leaving my family behind, and I look forward to coming back home to them. But I enjoyed the whole process. Like I enjoy my job. It doesn't feel like a drag.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So despite the jet lag,
because you're doing something that you passionately love. So
exactly.
I think so it's not a job to you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's become like a way of life.
Yeah. But how does the family feel? Does it take a toll on your family? Because you're in and out, most of the time.
Yeah, I have 3 kids. So the wife, she's my pillar of strength, at home. Yeah, so she has everything handled at home. Sometimes, I feel bad because, I leave her behind to handle the kids on her own, and then I go flying off around the world, enjoying myself. But yeah, I get to give back as well, so as much as I can, I take her out traveling.
Because that's the perk, right? You can
give them a good life. Yeah.
All right. Before we end, right, there, I do want to talk about the financial part. If this is something that you're willing to share, or at least give us a range, so at least our listeners can make an informed decision if this is something that they want to do. Because $150,000 is really a lot. Like back then, if I was just graduate from school, definitely I don't have the money, the means to do that, right? So for someone who really is passionate about it and couldn't go through the SQ line, couldn't go through the RSF line, going through your line, need to fork out that 150K, they have to go for loan and all of this stuff. How's the financial? We always know that pilot, they earn a lot, right? So as a second officer, do you mind sharing like what's the range that you can get, and then as a first officer, and for if someone who wants to do this as their career, right, all the way till they retire as a captain, like how much do you know, like roughly on an annual basis, like from a second officer to a first officer to a captain? Do you have a rough idea? Is there something that you can share with our listeners?
I'll give you like ballpark figures. So second officers, they earn about 40,000 Singapore dollars annually. It's
Okay.
not that much.
This is
Uh,
without allowance or with
this
allowance?
second officers where I flew didn't get any flying allowance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So you get like a monthly salary.
yeah, yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah.
Okay.
I think we did get flying allowances like only on the last stage of training,
Okay.
because we had to fly with safety pilots, first officers who were qualified already,
Mm-hmm.
and they just observe just to make sure, sometimes I might miss out something as a second officer and the captain doesn't catch it. So the first officer sits there as a safety pilot. So he gets the flying allowance.
Okay.
But yeah, towards the last stage, I don't need a safety pilot anymore as a second officer. So it's me and the training captain. So I did get back paid for like a few of those training flights.
Okay.
But ballpark figure 40,000 annually, second officer. As a first officer, it ranges because in my company we have a first officer, we have senior first officers. So we have different tiers.
Okay.
But the salary range with allowances, I would say it's around 130,000 to $160,000 annually
For
as a first
yeah.
officer. Yeah. And
Which is a lot for most people.
yeah.
Just saying. Yeah.
And for captains, almost double.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, almost double. Or at least minimum additional 50% increase.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really good. So, I think for our listeners who's looking into going to this line, you see that the benefit that you get, even if you have to invest $150,000, you can really see that reward coming back. So it is a good investment.
Yeah.
Plus, if this is your passion, like what Latif say, it's not work to him. Every day it's a way of life. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, that's the best type of work. Coming to work is you don't feel like work. It's just a way of life.
Yeah.
So really appreciate you, spending your time here. Just flew from Singapore and then come over here to entertain me with this podcast. And this is the first of our series. So appreciate a lot. But before we go, could you just give some golden nuggets that what do you want to impart to our listeners for those who inspired to be a pilot like yourself?
Golden nugget. Something you said about perseverance before, it reminded me of a Batman quote.
Okay. I love Batman. Batman is my favorite hero.
Exactly.
By the way, so.
Remember when Alfred asked Bruce, why do we fall, Bruce? So that we can learn to pick ourselves up. So I live by that, basically whenever life knocks you down, you get up, brush yourself off, continue, just keep putting the next foot forward and you will get there eventually. And if the path doesn't take you where you want to go, then always be grateful for what you have. Yeah.
That is such a great advice from Latif. So,
Yeah.
Latif, I take that advice personally to heart as well. That is how I feel in life. Perseverance is really, really important. We fail so many times, but don't ever give up and just keep on going. So,
Exactly.
thank you so much for your time, Latif. Really appreciate your time here. And to our listeners, I hope you enjoy this session. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.